Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Renovators, the business advisory show for real estate professionals. My name is Chanell and this is Rexy.
How are you, Chanell?
I am very good. I'm very good. It's sunny, it's Friday, we're filming with some amazing people.
We are filming
Nothing
with some
to complain
amazing
about.
people.
How about you?
I'm good. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to today's episode.
Me too.
This episode. I think what we're going to learn today is resilience and a whole new segment, not a new segment on the market, but it's a really growing segment of real estate, advocacy. And I think our guests will talk about the stats where, you know, the statistics are 3% of properties are bought through advocates, and the statistics show that it's going to go to 20% of properties to be bought through advocates. And what a lot of people don't understand is a transition. And our guest was a prominent real estate agent with you know, $1 million writer himself, and he transitioned through some resilience and some stuff that happened that we'll probably touch on, but is now growing this monster advocacy business that's going from strength to strength, and can share with us how that transition happened, and how you can go from a tough time, even a resilience of that, and then transition from a sales role, or a BDM role or a property management role into advocacy. So, do you want to introduce?
Absolutely. Welcome, Matt Scafidi.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
From Abode
Advocacy.
Yeah.
How are you, Matt? Looking
Really
sharp,
well.
looking healthy and looking fit.
Yeah, just coming off Feb fast. So, yeah, we're March 1, so we're good to go.
How do you feel?
I feel good. Yeah, I feel really good. And I started sort of probably towards the end of January when we came back from our break. And so I started a little bit early, but no, I feel really good.
Good to hear.
Yeah, found some zero beers and everything else, and they taste not too bad.
So you're still drinking, but not alcoholic.
Yeah, correct. Just having that thing in your hand, I suppose, for smokers and all that sort of stuff. They do the same thing. They just need something. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, Matt, let's start by touching on your story before we go into the success of Abode. You started in real estate and then moved over to the advocacy space. Talk us through that journey.
Okay, 15 years as a sales agent, and then a business owner, and a leader and stuff as well. And from that was great. And to right off the cuff, I want to say I regret nothing that's happened and nothing that I've done, because at the end of the day, it's brought me to where I am today, and that's a really, really important thing. But the cool part about real estate is the people you meet and the relationships that you build. And in the sales side of things, it is a dog-eat-dog business, and we understand that and we get that. I had some things that happened to me back in 2021, and I had to make some decisions on what I was going to do. At that time, a fairly low time, I was at some stage thinking about pulling out completely and going and opening a bar or doing something. Wouldn't be good for Feb Fast, but doing something and getting out. But the sensible voice in my life, my wife, Tanya, said to me, no, you've put too much effort, too much time into your career to date, and you got more to offer. So, and she actually said, how about you consider doing advocacy? And I sort of thought about that, and, you know, I thought about the stigma on it as well, because a lot of people sort of say those that can't do advocacy sort of thing, and that's changing massively. And I went out and I spoke to a number of industry leaders, the likes of Kate Bakos and Greville Pabst, and sat down with them and got their take on things. And I thought this could be a space that will work really, really well for me. And so that's a very short version. You can expand on where you want me to expand, so I don't waste your time. But that's where I've been, and that's where I am right now. So
can we go 15 years as a sales agent, and then open up, 2 offices, I think, at one stage.
Yep, correct.
And how has that been? Because you were a good, and still are a good agent, but a good sales agent, teams underneath yourself.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't miss having a big team around me. That's one of the things, because you've got to, and you both run big businesses as well, and you've got to deal with everyone's problems and issues and everything else of the day, and that's okay, because if you choose to take that role, that's what you're there to do. But the thing that I've loved about transitioning over is that there's more time, there's more
Focus on your craft.
Yeah, focus on the craft.
Yeah.
And focus on actually helping people. I mentioned earlier that in real estate, your job is to get the deal done. That's what you're there to do. You're a deal maker. And in the advocacy space, you're there to help people. And you're there to advocate for them at the end of the day. So it was a really nice shift, and it probably mirrored the shift in me at that time as well, because with things that occurred, I had to really look inwards. You can't just blame everything externally. You've got to look inwards and say, how do I need to change, evolve, and everything else to improve? And, you know, I came out of that going, I don't want to fight in the lounge room day in, day out with the best agents in the area. And
you were the best agent in the area for a long time.
One of them. But, you know, at the end of the day, some of those agents I used to compete against quite fiercely, I'm now really good friends with. And that's the great thing, because I'm no longer a competitor, and they need me, I need them, and we've built really, really good relationships from there. So it was a really good segue into going into something different. And as always, you listen to your partner, and generally they have the sense to head you in the right direction.
And Matt, you know, I speak to a lot of agents, and they tend to want to transition out of sales because of exactly what you've mentioned. It is relentless. It can morph your character to some extent. It can make you do things that you potentially don't want to do, or morally, ethically, you lack balance. You lack, you know, there's so many things that can take away from you. How was the transition into advocacy? And before we talk about the actual task, in terms of work-life balance, mental health, how's that transition been for you?
It's been awesome. It's been huge, to be honest. More time for my family, more time for myself, and more time for my clients as well. And that's the thing, that what I found when you're running, you know, 15 to 20 vendors at a time, and you're running a team and everything else as well, you distance yourself from the human connection.
Oh, yeah.
You have to, because otherwise you take on people's problems, because people are often selling because of death, divorce, debt, all bad reasons, yeah? But in the advocacy space, we don't deal with anyone going through anything bad. Nothing's going bad when people are buying a property, you know?
Very true.
They've just got married, so they're happy, or they've just got a better job, or they've just moved from states to be closer to family, or whatever they've done. It's all positive things. So that part of it was really, really good. And the other part is that I now can work in the space and have no conflicts of interest at all, and be working with nobody either that has a different agenda as well. So it's been huge. And
breath of fresh air.
Yeah, 100%.
Go back on it. You mentioned no conflict of interest, and I think that's something that people may not quite understand what you mean by that, because with sales, you're competing. You're competing against every other agent that's there. Advocacy is different. Can you touch on what your experiences have been with advocacy?
100%. When I talk about conflict of interest, you know, I always say to our clients now as buyers, I always say, listen, what you're doing at the moment, trying to go to the sales agent and trying to connect with them and get them to give you off markets and to help you along to purchase the property, it's like, and I use it as lawyers, I say, listen, if a lawyer is suing you on behalf of another person, you don't go to that lawyer and say, can you also represent me? And they go, no, I would never do that. You go, well, that's sort of what you're doing when you go to the real estate agent and say, can you help me as well? Because they're there and legislated to look after their vendor's best interests, not the buyer. So in answer to your question, in the buying space now, we're representing that buyer. The agent is representing the vendor, and we're both there to try and get a deal done. And they know that we've got a serious buyer. They know that we know the laws, the rules in and around the transaction and how to negotiate that. And they're actually finding it an easier process as well than to deal with perhaps a buyer that doesn't know that they've got 3 days cooling off, or that they can put a building and pest inspection in, or that their offer looks stronger if it's not subject to finance, and let's work on getting the finance sorted before we go looking, all those sort of things. Yeah.
You were touching on statistics in your opening intro, and so yourself, Matt. Was it 0.2% are you saying?
In 2021, the NAB Bank put out a report saying 3% of properties across Australia were bought by buyers agents or buyer advocates. and they are suggesting and forecasting by 2025 it'll be 20%.
Why is that? That's amazing. And why is that?
I think it's an industry that is growing at a rate of knots at the moment, and that's why we've got to make sure that we've got the industry bodies in place and best practice and all that sort of thing, so we keep it really, really well managed and looked after. But it's a space like I equate it to the staging side of things. Like 15 years ago, you would go, if you had a 2-bedroom apartment, you go, oh no, the staging's just for the Toorak and Brighton mansions sort of thing, right? Whereas now, everyone that sells a property goes, I need to get this staged, right? And I think that in the next 10 to 15 years, I think in this space, in the buyer advocacy space, people will be saying, I need to be represented on my side. Which is
what America does. In America, every single transaction's got a buyer and a vendor.
Yeah, correct. And we generally do follow the American model on most things.
About 20 years later.
Yeah, about 20 years later, correct. And that's where I reckon we're on, that's the trajectory we're on, I think, at this particular point in time. And when I came into advocacy, I wanted to, as I said, talk to a number of people that have been in it for a long time and understood it and could shed some light on that for me. But I also wanted to bring, and it's funny, a couple of people sort of say in the buyer advocacy space, oh, you still smell like a sales agent.
Nah.
And I'm like, listen, I'm always going to have that little bit there, but I think it brings something to our clients that, you know, at the end of the day, we've actually been on the other side, so we know.
Well, that's the benefit of you being an advocate. Yeah, you know exactly what the sales agents are trying to do, the tactics, the scare tactics, and all the rest. Like, that's a massive benefit.
It would be. Yeah. Can we go back? Transitioning from a sales agent to an advocate, how do you go about that? So if someone's watching, they're great sales agents and they've kind of had enough or whatever's happened, they may want to look at becoming an advocate. What's the transition look like? How do you start? What do you do? What's the role difference?
Yes, well, I think the best thing for somebody to do is to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to as many people as wanted to reach out, as I did, and people were willing to catch up for a coffee and what have you and sit down and explain it. But there's the REIV this week, we went to a breakfast this week for the buyers agents chapter, and they are bringing out a course mid-year. So the REIV will have a buyers agent course back up and running, which will be great. So that's where I'd send anybody immediately. So Lisa, who's just started in our business, when that course starts, she'll be heading to that course straight away. There's things like REBA, who is the industry association that we're connected to as well. And they do a lot of training, and we went to the conference there last year. It was brilliant, and I came away with so many things going, we need to implement these things straight away. So
because it sounds like compared to a sales where there's so much training courses and trainers and coaches out there.
There's a lot less.
It's
because when you look at sales agents, there's 40,000 odd sales agents across Australia. I reckon across Australia there might be 2,500, 3,000 buyers agents.
But there's a stigma to it as well, which you touched on earlier, that, you know, most sales agents in the past, it is changing very quickly, has got this. What were your views on advocates before you became an advocate?
Oh, listen, there are some advocates that I've dealt with over the past that I haven't completely agreed with their model and the way they go about things. For example, on our vendor advocacy side, we don't share in the agent's commission at all, because I think, as I said, that's a conflict of interest. I might flare some things up here, but I do think that we should be advocating for our vendor at that time in the vendor advocacy space to get the best possible commission from the agent, and we shouldn't be sharing in that, because otherwise, why would we be getting it to a lower level? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, you know, there was some in question transitioning. I had probably a 6-month break from selling real estate to be able to focus on building the back end of this business. And I spent a lot of time and effort on it, and it helped me. It was actually, it's not to sound cheesy, but it was healing, to be honest, to be able to have something to focus on and to be able to go, this is mine, and we can go whichever way we want to go. And how do we want to be perceived? How do we want to come across? And how do we want to run this business? So that part of it was really, really cool. Yeah.
And the back end, how different is it from, because you've done back end of sales offices and back end of advocacy, it must be very...
It's really cool, Rex.
Okay.
Because there's there's not the paperwork that goes on in the real estate space, in the real estate sales space. No trust accounts, no authorities as such, no 9-page REIV authorities. No one claiming commissions on things because, you know, someone looked at the property when they had a authority, all that sort of stuff. It's non-existent. And we run a business where pretty much I can run my business straight off my phone. I've got Xero on there. I've got our box and dice. I've got
how refreshing.
Pipe. I've got all that stuff there. We don't have a filing cabinet in our office. And Lisa, who's just started with us, she goes, "Oh, where do I file this?" I go, "You scan it and you put it into the cloud." So we can access.
And you can do that on your phone now. You got that iScan and scan, so you don't.
Yeah, the Adobe scan.
Yeah,
it's just brilliant. So, so these are the things that we were mindful of coming out of COVID and everything else. We wanted to make sure this business, if we were shut down, God help that we're not, but if we were shut down again, we could continue to run our business. We could continue to be able to look at property for clients, and we could continue to meet with them when needed.
So good. Yeah. And you service all of Melbourne, Matt?
We like to focus mainly in the east. So about just short of 80% of the properties we purchase are Melbourne's east. And the cool part about the buyer's agent space is that we mentioned Emily Wallace before. You know, people share referrals, and they don't. I was talking to a real estate director the other day, and I said, you know, I'm sure you've got agents in your office that, you know, you're based in Whitehorse and they get a listing from their grandfather in Point Cook and they're out, you know, driving 3 hours round trip. And they go, yeah. And I go, well, in this space, it'd just be, you'd be best served with this person that looks after that area. So, you know, Melbourne's pretty big, and to be an expert in all those spaces, you couldn't be.
It's very hard.
Yeah, it is, exactly. And what we like to do is we do a lot of due diligence, and that's the thing that is the shift and the change. We know everything about property. We're telling agents what they don't know about the property that they've listed.
Because you do the building, the pest inspection, you do everything as an advocate. Yeah,
planning, we go to council, we do a whole checklist of due diligence. We're talking to an agent this week, and we said, are you aware of the 43 apartments being built across the road that has been approved? I don't know whether they knew or they didn't, but it seemed as if they didn't.
There's a lot of dopey agents. Agents.
Correct.
They don't pay attention.
So when you pay your fee, Matt, and this is more out of curiosity, so does this all come into the cost? So you sort of cover the cost of the building inspection, pest inspection. How does that work?
Building and pest inspections are paid by the client separately.
Okay.
And contract reviews and things like that. We talked about that earlier, so we'll sort that. But everything else is done by us. So we visit the property, we come away, we say, listen, we think it meets your brief. We're going to do a bit more due diligence now. We check to see whether there's any Department of Housing homes around, not that they're all bad, but you want to know before you go in to buy. You want to know about planning permits. Is there a 3-story apartment building being built next door or across the road? You want to know the transactional history of that property as well. Who's owned it, for how long, all those sort of things, because...
So you go deep dive.
We deep dive. Our client, before they bid at auction or negotiate a private sale, they know everything about that house, because we are mindful that we don't want them to come back and say, Matthew, there's an issue over the back fence, and that's why this house is sold every 18 months for the last 20 years, because people... there's a smell, or there's a this, or there's that, or whatever it might be. So you've got to be really, really mindful that, you know, it's not just about, and that's what I was saying before, we're not deal makers, we're there to help people transition, and we want to make sure that when they do, they can enjoy that property and get value out of that property for a very, very long time.
It's the biggest asset you're going to purchase in your life, to not have someone... I'll share a quick story. I had a friend purchase a property recently, only to find out a year later the tunnel's getting built directly underneath it. And the house is shaking, and there's all these things happening. And she went through the contracts of sale, you know, and nothing was disclosed. So, you know, to have someone, when you're purchasing 1.5, whatever it is, millions of dollars, you really need someone that is a specialist in that will advocate for you to go, this is a good option, this is not. Because look, I love our real estate industry. I've got so many friends, and my business is built on salespeople.
Me too.
But in saying that they're salespeople. They want to get a deal done. They're working for the vendor.
Yep.
You need someone working for you and advocating for you to make sure it is the best possible decision. Matt, one question. Sorry, did you have a question, Maxie? I'm interrupting. So I'm a buyer and I've got 1.6, 1.7, $1.8 million budget in the eastern suburbs. What are your recommendations right now? Where's best to buy?
Sounds like are you trying to get free advice?
Well, my wedding's coming up. I'm looking for a wedding gift. You're in the eastern suburbs. I'm just buttering you up. No, out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think what we would always do is we'd sit down with you. We'd have what we call a buyer discovery meeting, and we'd find out what it is you're hoping to achieve out of that purchase. Some people are coming to us and they want the forever home. Some people want the first home. And a lot of first home buyers will say, we want this, and this. And then I say, listen, how long are you going to be there? And they go, oh, we haven't really thought about that. I go, you really do need to think about that. Is it going to be 3 or 4 years and then you're going to have kids maybe and then you're going to move on? And it's going to be too small. Are we going to use that as an investment tool at that time, or are we going to sell that? Because we need to know whether we're looking for rental yield later on, or appreciation. So in answer to your question...
Can't have both, can you? Yield and appreciation. It's very hard to have both.
It's like a unicorn.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Got any of those?
Yeah, well, we have found some unicorns along the way and continue to do so. We had one last week. We bought 275-day search because we knew the school zone they needed, the train station they needed. The property was brand new, so when we started the search, it wasn't even built. So in the end, it was built and we bought it, so that worked. But in answer to your question, the eastern suburbs now 1516. Well, what we're actually doing is we're trying to find you something potentially off market or pre-market, because at the end of the day, we believe that we can save a buyer anywhere from 2 to 5% just on that. And a quick story, last year in November, we had a property that we had verbal offer and acceptance from the vendors on for a client off market. It was $2.55 million. And for personal reasons, the client couldn't proceed with that contract at that time, signing and everything else. So spoke to the agent. The agent was very cool about it and said, no, we'll go to auction as planned. That's all fine. Went to auction a couple of weeks ago and sold for 2.9.
Wow.
So it was a $350,000. So
crazy.
You sit there and you go, that's why agents like to go to auction a lot of the time and take it to market, and I get that. But what I'm saying is our job is to get on the phones, to send the brief out to as many agents in that area as we possibly can. And that's what we get feedback on all the time from the agents, is that we're one of the few advocates they hear from on a regular basis via phone.
People don't call anymore. Everyone hides behind SMSs and emails.
But how does the average consumer get access to off-market?
They hire a buyer's
So you can only really do it through buyer's advocacy, right?
You can.
There's like listing loop and...
Yeah, there's a few little things out there, but at the end of the day, the way I see it is this, is that if a consumer goes to 4 agents and says, can you keep me updated? That agent is so busy. They're looking after 15, because they'll go to the most prominent sales agents in the area.
And sometimes, sorry to cut you off, it's not in the agent's best interest to not take it to auction.
Correct.
Because the auction's the
100%.
Well, again,
the grand show for the agency as
the
well.
agent works for the vendor.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So that's the thing. I mean, we're always talking about opening up the opportunities that are there for our clients. And
based on relationships as well.
Based on relationships.
When you're calling someone, they know who you are.
The thing is, right, people think you walk... the average person thinks that when you go into a real estate office, you're essentially saying, like, this is what I want to buy, and you're thinking they're actually matching you.
Yeah.
The average person doesn't know about buyer's advocacy at all. Yeah. I know we do because we're so embedded in the industry, so for us it's second nature. But when I speak to friends and family that are buying and I say, have you considered a buyer's advocate?
Yep.
Every single time they're like, what is that? And then they always say the same thing. Isn't that what the agent does?
My mum's still not sure what I do.
Yeah, don't worry, my mum's not sure what I do either.
Exactly. And I'm always sitting there saying to Dion, my business partner, saying, we've got to just keep educating people on what it is that we do. That's our social media. That's what we're trying to do all the time. We're not talking about what we bought something for and how much money we save people and the address and this and that. So different to sales. And don't get me wrong, I've been just as guilty on the other side. But now it's just this was the brief, this is how we went about it, and this is how we
touched on about the due diligence you do. Not many people understand that part of it, because when you talk about buying a property, you don't think, I'm going to go to council and see what planning permits are around me. I need to go see if there's a tunnel being built underneath.
Correct.
Because the contract should say it, sometimes it doesn't. The agent should know it, sometimes they don't.
It's the old, if it's not approved, it may never happen, so it's not an actual material fact. So that's where, and agents, I get it, because they're there to get the property sold.
Correct.
They shouldn't be at the front saying, you realise there might be a tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. They work for the vendor,
You know, if it was approved and everything else, obviously they would need to just disclose that. But if it's not approved and it's on the agenda, they're not going to let anybody know.
But you do that. That's what I'm getting to.
We go,
this may be coming up. At least you alert them of it.
Correct.
This can save or make people hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's crazy what a good advocate can do.
Enjoyment of the property as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
And what you touched on about the history, like, you know, if someone's moved out every year, you look into that.
Yeah,
like there could be a smell.
Even the time saved, like, but searching for a property it's like the average person that work full time or they've got friends.
9 months.
But you have to spend every Saturday going to opens, checking realestate.com. It is such an overwhelming, it's like, this is Tinder, essentially, for property.
Swipe left, right, swipe left, right.
But you are also going to the date and negotiating the date as well. Like, that's what a dream.
We went to the date, it was no good.
Yeah, no, that one.
So it's a no further interest from us.
What's the second base on this phone?
And you're 100% right. And that's the thing, we filter out the junk and we keep the good stuff. And we've got a board that we run for buyers, and they can look at that at any time. You're talking about your tech in the background before. Similar thing, they can go in and they can say, oh, these guys have looked at 28 homes for us and they put them into the no further interest. And here's all the notes and reason why. 43 apartments being built across the road, tunnel being built underneath, all those things. And they go, right, I can now see the value. But it's not until they actually employ us sometimes and engage us that they actually see that value.
But that's the educational piece, because they don't realise that's what you're doing. They just think, oh, you might get some off-market deals, or you might be able to negotiate. You're going to bid for me at auction. Is that worth it? It's not about that.
The question we get so often is, what if we find our own property and online and we send it to you? I go, yeah, okay. What are you asking? Do we still pay the same fee? And I go, well, yeah, of course you do. And they go, well, why is that? And I go, well, you still want it to be negotiated or bid on. You still want the due diligence all done and made sure that it's right. You still want us to be ensuring that there's no better option out there for you.
Termites.
Sorry?
No, termites.
Termite,
Underground moles.
Correct.
Who knows?
All those sort of things. And that's what we're there to do. So we're there to protect, and that's why we're in a much different space now from the real estate selling side, in the sense of we are there and we're going to be engaged with these people long after the sale. And a lot of agents, and I was guilty of it at times, put the sold sticker on, get the photo, see you later, never see them again, and away we go, because that was the business model. You've got to get it in, you've got to get it out. Now, I bump into clients all the time, and I've got no issue talking to them because I've got nothing to hide, no worries whatsoever, because we know we did everything we possibly could to make sure they bought the right property at the right time. And we say that all the time. We say no to more than we say yes to. It's not a rush to get people bought. But at the end of the day, our average is 59 days searching.
Wow.
And that's even with the 275-day one recently. So I always say we compress the whole process really quickly, because we're working on your file. Like, for example, if you're busy, you're doing these type of things, you're running a business as well, getting married overseas, and you wanted to buy a home, give us the job. We'll work on it 5-6 days a week for you, and we'll compress that search time for you. And we'll only show you the gems, the ones that you should be looking at. Everything else, you don't need to clutter your mind with. And that's what we're there to do.
What are the gems at the moment? Are we talking Victorian homes? What's sort of the hottest properties on the market at the moment? What's the biggest demand?
We've got a client at the moment looking for a double fronted Victorian in Hawthorne, Hawthorne East. And it's just, whenever they come up, they're gone and they're sold really, really, really well. So that's what we're seeing at the moment, is that that's a really hard one to nail down. But we'll keep trying, we'll get there, and we'll find it for them. But the homes that are done, turnkey, ready to go, doing exceptionally well. And so if you've got a double fronted Victorian that needs plenty of work, there's plenty of those around that we could probably buy. But if you want it all finished and done, because that's what people want, they're scared 30 to 40% increase on building materials.
Oh, yeah, it's through the roof.
Builders going bust.
Your builders going bust. Tradies, can you get them? And if you do get them, do they turn up? All these sort of things that they're concerned about. So at the moment, the turnkey homes are the things that are just flying off the shelf.
That is excellent, and I'm very glad. I'm very happy about that.
Yes.
Made a good decision.
How have you found, like, we're talking about these, rental crises, a shortage of stock. Real estate agents talking about, stock levels being low. Government saying there's not enough houses being built. All of this, it must affect your business as well.
Oh, 100%. And it's one of those things that you often will buy a property that's been tenanted, and you're putting a person, principal place of residence in, and you sit there and you go, okay, but that person that we've put into that property was renting, and realised that it was probably getting to a point where it's cheaper for them to buy. And that's what we are seeing. We're seeing that, with rents increasing, we looked at a property the other day, 2-3 years ago, it was renting for $360. Now it's renting for $560. So you sit down and you go, right, okay, that's driving people to go, it's actually cheaper for me to go and get a mortgage now. So the good part about that is that we're seeing a number of people sort of securing properties and becoming owners themselves. But the rental crisis is going to continue. I can't see it stopping anytime soon.
And not many people are building anymore because it's
correct.
Another one collapsed just the other day. They're all collapsing.
Correct. And the building industry, it takes time, right? You don't just build new homes in 2 months, right? So
if you get the plans.
And what is it? No gas. No gas in new homes.
No gas in new
tops.
homes.
Yeah,
correct.
So much is changing.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I talk to clients all the time that culturally with their cooking, they go, we need gas.
Yeah, of course.
Gas. So that forces them to go, well, we can't look at anything new. We need to look at something established.
Yeah.
So it changes all the time, and we see that at the coalface, I suppose.
Does it improve though? Like, will more people be using advocates now because it's so hard to find property because it's such a shortage of good property, or any property really out there, but good property in particular? They can go find an advocate to help shorten that time.
Well, 48.5% of the properties we buy are off market or pre-market. 48.5%. So that means, I was talking to another advocate the other day, they're close to 60%.
Wow.
So what that means is there's this market below the market that you can't see as a consumer, okay? So the only way you can access that is by engaging a buyer's advocate. It's not the be all to end all. There are some absolute junk off market things that we get across our desk that are overpriced and just not worth it. But, the important part is to align yourself with an advocate that is going to make sure that they don't just put you into an off market because it's there and available and spend your whole budget. If we can save money for our clients, we always will. But, 48.5%, it's a lot that you look at. So for mine, I think that, I'm thinking maybe of making a move in the next couple of years or whatever at the moment. And I will use a different advocate.
Oh, you'll engage an advocate?
I will engage an advocate. I'm running a business. I've got a life. I've got family. I've got everything else I'm doing. Let them focus on my search whilst I focus on other people's. Does that make sense?
Look, if I was ever on the market for a job, I'd absolutely use a recruiter.
Yeah.
You know the benefit. You know
on.
they're going to get you the best price. You know they're going to filter out the worst companies. Like, you're paying them because you appreciate their service and the effort that goes into it. We're busy humans.
Rex,
we can't
would you
do
represent yourself?
Never.
Correct. You'd never represent yourself. Why would you? It's ridiculous to think of. So it's the same. You've said the same. I've said the same. So, it means that we believe in what it is that we do. And that's the important part. And that's the cool part now in what I'm doing. I firmly believe in what I'm doing, and we're helping people. And that's the really cool part.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And Matt, you're such a breath of fresh air. You can see how much passion and enjoyment you have in this industry, and your experience as an agent, a business owner, has translated so perfectly over to the advocacy. If I was looking for an advocate, if I was a first home buyer, I'd look at Emily, of course, 'cause she's one of my besties. But that's not the case. If I was, you're exceptional in what you do. Any advice for any other advocates out there before we finish up?
Oh, listen, I think that the advocacy space is growing, and advocates have got to keep up with that. you know, there'd be a lot of advocates out there that would look at our social media and think, is it too much? Is it, you know, what are they doing? There's a lot of content there, all that sort of thing. I think that they've got to catch up as well, because we are heading into a space that we're going to get busier and busier, and we need to be able to, I suppose, it'll be more competitive. And once it gets more competitive, you need to be in front of the game.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and that's the thing that I love most about bringing some of my sales history and experience over into the advocacy space. You know, we've got our signs, you know, our buyer advocates were Abode Advocacy Group, and, you know, little core flutes that people stand in front of boards, because I would look at it and I'd look at other advocates and I'd say, but you bought that, but you're advertising the brand behind, type thing. So I've brought that into it, and then not just, it wasn't my idea, I've seen other people do it.
Your branding is awesome.
Yeah, we love it.
Educational pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all we want to do, is we just want to educate people on how we can help them, because people don't know what they don't know. It's as simple as that. And, you know, at the end of the day, I was talking to an advocate on the way here this morning, and he said it was really funny. He was off Instagram, someone said, come and see me. And they said, now, I don't know whether you can help me yet, because I don't know what it is you do. Explain it to me.
Yeah.
So that's what we just got to continue to do. And, you know, I think the relationships that I built over the 15 years in real estate have massively helped grow Abode in its infancy, where it'll be 2 years in September. But we've loved every minute of it. And the most important part is we're having fun. And I think that's the important key.
It's such a joyous role.
Yeah.
All positives.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add there, Rexy?
No, thank you for taking time out and joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Always a pleasure seeing you, Matt. We met all those years ago at the block, and now here we are, and it's always a pleasure every single time I see you. But thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us.
Yeah.
If you are on the market for a home, or you want to learn more about the advocacy space, Matt will always answer his phone and no doubt answer any questions that you have.
Well, if you're an agent and want to learn more about how to become an advocate.
I'm happy to talk to whoever. Lots of people have talked to me over the years, so I'm happy to reciprocate. No problem at all.
Or you call Chanell the recruiter.
Exactly.
Anyway, that's just
Either
semantics.
And Rex looks over your employment agreement.
Exactly right. Well, thank you so much for watching another episode of Real Estate Renovators. See you next time.